Let me ask you something. When was the last time you did something powerful, something meaningful, and then felt the urge to explain it to someone just to prove it mattered? We live in a culture obsessed with titles, labels, resumes. But I want to offer you a quiet, radical invitation. Never tell people what you do. Not because you should hide it, but because what you do is never as important as who you are while you do it. See, vulnerability isn't just about opening up. It's about owning the parts of your life that don't need validation. When we lead with a title, a job description, or our achievements, we're protecting ourselves from judgment. But what if real courage comes from not needing to be understood at all? Let's talk about what it really means to let your life speak louder than your voice. Because if you're doing something real, something true, you don't have to tell people, they'll feel it. When you strip away the labels, 5 truths begin to emerge. 5 anchors that keep you rooted in what actually matters. First, authenticity speaks louder than explanation. When we meet someone new, there's often a pressure to immediately define ourselves by what we do. We reach for titles, accomplishments, or something that sounds impressive. It feels like a shortcut to connection, but more often it's a barrier. When we lead with what we do, we risk shrinking the fullness of who we are into something neat and digestible. Authenticity asks for something braver. It asks us to be seen without the armor of achievement. When you're authentic, you don't need to explain your worth. You show up fully present, not performing, not persuading. That kind of presence is rare, and people can feel it. It's the difference between someone who walks into a room needing to be acknowledged and someone who walks into a room already grounded in who they are. That energy, steady, rooted, real, leaves an impression that no elevator pitch ever could. In a world where so many are hustling to be heard, authenticity becomes a quiet rebellion. It refuses to compete. It doesn't seek validation. It simply is. And because of that, it's magnetic. People remember how you made them feel, how you listened, how you showed up, not what your job title was. When you stop trying to explain who you are and instead choose to embody it, you give others permission to do the same. This is where connection begins, not in the telling, but in the being. Authenticity doesn't shout, it doesn't sell, it simply speaks with or without words. And that's what people remember. Second, self-worth is not a job title. Many of us are taught from an early age to attach our value to productivity. We grow up hearing questions like, what do you want to be when you grow up? As if our purpose can be condensed into a single role or profession. By the time we're adults, it becomes second nature to introduce ourselves with what we do for a living. Somewhere along the way, we start to believe that our job title, our career achievements, and our external success are the primary ways we prove our worth. But the truth is, your self-worth was never meant to be defined by a line on a business card. A job title can change, roles shift, careers evolve. What remains constant is who you are at your core. You are not just a teacher or a manager or an entrepreneur. You are someone who brings light into the room. You are someone who listens deeply. You are someone who lifts others when they can't lift themselves. And none of that needs a title to be valid. When you build your identity around what you do, you create a fragile foundation. If the job ends, if the success fades, if the world stops applauding, you're left wondering who you are without the label. But when you root your self-worth in your values, your character, and your humanity, you create something unshakable. You begin to see yourself as enough, not because of what you produce, but because of how you live and love and show up in the world. Owning your worth without hiding behind a title is an act of courage. It's choosing to believe that you matter, even when you are in transition, even when your path is unclear, even when your work is invisible to others. When you no longer need your job to validate your existence, you start to live with more freedom, more truth, and more joy. And from that place, everything you do becomes an extension of who you are, not the definition of it. Third, mystery is not the enemy of connection. We often feel compelled to offer people immediate clarity about who we are. We fill silences with explanations and lean into oversharing as a way to build rapport. There's a cultural belief that connection requires complete transparency right away. as if being fully known means being fully understood on the spot. But real connection isn't built through constant explanation. It's built through curiosity, through time, and through allowing space for the unknown. When you leave a little mystery, you invite others to engage more deeply. You allow them to lean in, to ask questions, to become invested in discovering who you really are. There is something powerful about not revealing everything at once. It creates room for connection to grow organically, rather than being rushed or forced. People are naturally drawn to authenticity, and part of being authentic is not always having to explain or justify yourself. It's trusting that your presence is enough, even if someone doesn't fully understand your story yet. In a world that constantly demands instant access and fast answers, choosing to hold something back isn't about being guarded. It's about honoring your own pace and your own boundaries. It's about recognizing that not every part of you is meant for everyone, and that the people who are truly meant to connect with you will be patient enough to stay curious. Mystery isn't about creating distance. It's about protecting the depth of who you are and offering it intentionally, not reactively. This approach requires confidence and vulnerability at the same time. It's not easy to let others sit in the unknown, especially when we fear being misunderstood. But when you resist the urge to explain everything, you begin to trust in your own wholeness. You realize that connection is not about how much you reveal, but how real you are when you show up. And in that space of quiet, steady presence, the most meaningful relationships have a chance to unfold. Fourth, purpose doesn't need PR. We live in a time where everything feels like it has to be shared, posted, and packaged for an audience. There's a subtle pressure to turn our passions into brands, our dreams into content, and our purpose into something that looks good from the outside. It's easy to get caught in the trap of thinking that if no one sees what you're doing, it must not matter. But real purpose doesn't need applause to be real. It doesn't need to be marketed or validated to have value. Purpose is not performance. It is quiet, steady, and deeply personal. The most meaningful work often happens in the background. It happens in the early mornings, in the late nights, in the quiet moments when no one is watching. Purpose is the choice to show up, to keep going, and to stay aligned with what matters to you, even when there's no spotlight. It's found in how you care for people, how you hold integrity when no one's looking, how you pursue your values when it's inconvenient. And all of that matters, whether or not it ever gets recognition. When you stop trying to package your purpose for public approval, something beautiful happens. You begin to trust the work for what it is, not what it looks like. You no longer shape your decisions around what will get the most attention or validation. Instead, you lead with intention. You ask yourself what is true, what is right, what is meaningful to you, not what will impress others. That kind of clarity builds a life that feels whole, even when it's invisible to the outside world. Purpose becomes most powerful when it's no longer about proving something. When you're rooted in why you do what you do, the need to explain or advertise it fades away. You move through the world with quiet confidence, knowing that your life is speaking for itself in ways no post or pitch ever could. The impact you make might not always be loud, but it will be lasting. Because what is real doesn't need to be performed. It just needs to be lived. Fifth, living fully is louder than telling constantly. There is a powerful difference between talking about life and actually living it. In a culture where sharing has become a kind of currency, we sometimes confuse constant telling with genuine connection. We feel the urge to narrate every step, to explain our choices, to convince others that we're on the right path. But the truth is, when you are truly living in alignment with who you are, you no longer feel the need to constantly declare it. The way you live begins to speak for itself. When you live fully, people notice. Not because you told them to, but because your energy shifts. There is a presence, a clarity, a kind of grounded joy that doesn't need to be introduced or justified. It's felt in how you show up, how you treat others, how you carry yourself in ordinary moments. This kind of authenticity doesn't need to be loud. It doesn't need a script. It just is. And ironically, it becomes more impactful than any story you could tell about it. Living fully means saying yes to the life that's true for you, even if it doesn't make sense to everyone else. It means choosing values over approval, purpose over popularity, depth over display. And when you do that, your actions become your message. People don't need you to explain what you're doing or why. They see the alignment. They feel the intention. They're moved by the way you live, not just by the words you speak. Constant telling often comes from a place of needing reassurance. It's understandable. We all want to feel seen and understood, but when you begin to trust yourself, that need softens. You no longer perform your life for others. You inhabit it fully for yourself, and in doing so, you offer something far more powerful than explanation. You offer a living example of what it means to be real, to be whole, to be free. And that kind of presence is louder than any speech, any introduction, any post. It resonates because it's honest. And people don't just hear it, they feel it. Let's slow down and sit with these words because they carry a quiet kind of power, the kind that doesn't knock at the door but changes everything once it walks in. So here's the invitation. That line isn't just a poetic gesture. It's an open hand, an offering to step out of the constant hustle for validation and into something deeper, something quieter, but more sustaining. It's an invitation to stop performing and start living. When we say, let your life be the loudest thing about you, we're not talking about volume in the traditional sense. This isn't about making noise. It's about embodying your values, your truth, and your integrity so fully that your life itself becomes your message. Every choice you make, every boundary you hold, every act of kindness or courage or honesty, that's your story unfolding. When you choose to move through the world with intention and presence, people can feel that it doesn't need an explanation. It doesn't need a title attached to it. The way you show up for others, the way you listen, the way you make space for joy and stillness and meaning those things echo louder than any words you could say about yourself. You don't have to prove your worth through titles or achievements. That line is about dismantling one of the deepest lies we're told, that we are only as valuable as what we do or produce. But worth isn't something to be earned. It's something you carry by simply being your existence, your heart, your presence. They are enough. Achievements are beautiful, but they are not the source of your value. They're an extension of it. When you stop trying to prove yourself, you give yourself the freedom to simply be yourself. And that's where the real magic begins. You don't have to explain your purpose to be living in it. That's about trusting that living in alignment with your values is enough. You don't need to market your path or articulate it in perfect words. When you're rooted in what matters to you, your life will reflect it. Your actions, your energy, your choices, they all become evidence of your purpose. Some people may not understand it, and that's okay. You're not here to be understood by everyone. You're here to live something true. And you don't need permission to be exactly who you are. This is the part that feels like both a reminder and a blessing. In a world constantly trying to shape you, this is your call to return home to yourself. You don't need to wait for someone else to tell you that you're allowed to be different, to be bold, to be quiet, to be soft, to be fierce, to be evolving. You get to choose yourself. You get to belong to yourself. The people who are meant to understand you will feel it long before you ever have to say it. That's the beauty of living authentically. The right people will recognize the energy behind your choices. They will sense your integrity, your depth, your presence. You won't have to explain who you are to be seen. The ones who are truly aligned with you won't need the backstory. They'll feel it in how you move, how you listen, how you love. So live fully, live honestly. Those words aren't just motivational, they're a direction, a compass. Full living means not holding back the parts of you that matter. It means taking up space where it's right, making room for rest, for growth, for connection. Honest living means refusing to perform. It means showing up in your truth, even when it's vulnerable, even when it's misunderstood. And finally, your presence is the story. Let it tell itself. That's the heart of it all. You don't have to narrate your journey to prove it's real. You don't need to dress it up or justify it. Just live it with courage, with kindness, with quiet conviction. Let people feel who you are by the way you show up in the world, because that kind of presence, the kind that doesn't need to be explained, leaves the deepest impact. It's felt and it's unforgettable.